This is The Craft. It's a pitching podcast. I'm your host, Nick Pollack, with recurring guests, Sarris. But no, really, we just wanted a podcast where we could just each bring a pitcher as a foundation for this one and just talk about it. But really, that's a basis of it. And then everything else is just anything that's going on in the pitching world. This is our podcast to just talk about that stuff. And I actually, and I were going to be like, cool, let's give each other a pitcher. And then you sent me two names, and I've already forgotten who they are. And I was like, don't tell me. I don't want to know. I wanted you to like tell me all the things. And I go like, oh yeah, okay, cool. And then I bring something to you.
That's a fun idea.
Yeah.
I hadn't even sort of crystallized that idea that we don't know what the other one's coming with.
Yeah,
so
no.
Each one of us is going to react and prepare. But
right.
we're gonna react to one and prepare for the other.
Well, I mean, it's kind of like those conversations we would have at like First Pitch Arizona or something. That's what we want to replicate, is that there's that fun of like, okay, cool, you've got something you want to really talk about, and we go, oh, okay, and the other one's like, oh yeah, all right. That's what we want to do inside of this. And so I'm so stoked for this. This is incredible. And let's just kind of go into it now. You sent me two guys. I think I remembered one of them. But who's the one that you wanted to talk about the most right now?
Well, this guy sort of encapsulates, I think, just so much of what I'm thinking about right now. And it's San Francisco Giants lefty Kyle Harrison.
That's right.
And the reason I want to talk about him, there's so many different things, and we'll get to them. But number one, we just did a revision of Stuff Plus. We just needed to train it on 2023 data, which is important because we just had a big rule change. The environment was totally different. So we wanted to get that in there. We also are now adjusting for weather, which kind of might be important for Kyle Harrison and altitude and stuff. So, and air density, because that changes the way pitches move. So we had this important update. In the update, once I ran it, he does not have a single pitch that registers above 100 average at Stuff Plus. So he apparently has bad stuff. I looked over at Pitcher List, and he you're like, he's a pretty good fastball, but he has crappy other stuff. And and so I was just kind of like, how does a pitcher that has crappy stuff strike out 38% of the batters he saw in the minor leagues? 38. He had 456 strikeouts in minor leagues.
Yeah, that's wild.
So this is a guy that the results have not really paired with the stuff models. And so I reached out to some people in the industry and poked around at his numbers and thought about stuff. And there's, I have suggestions for, what he could throw and what he should throw and why it is this way and what's going on. But that's the fundamental reason that I wanted to bring up Kyle Harrison, was that it's one of those ones where the model doesn't agree with the results. And yet he seems like, to the eye test, especially if you saw that first start, you're like, this is an exciting young pitcher.
Sure.
This is a 95-mile-an-hour lefty with a great two-plane fastball that has struck out everybody. He is, the next guy for the San Francisco Giants, which seems like something we would all want in fantasy or as a Giants fans.
Yeah. I don't like Kyle Harrison.
All right. So you're along with the models. Is it
okay?
So
the model is weird because IVB is horrific. It's like 13.5, right? It's not good. And extension is above average, like 6.7. It's really is low VAA.
It's kind of like a sinker that's somehow classified as a four-seamer.
Right. Yeah. Right.
Or like a like a traditional two-seam.
Well, yeah, like the Andrew Heaney of old, right? Or the Andrew Sean Manaea, that kind of stuff from the left side. And the thing is, the reasons I don't really like those guys anymore is the same as it is with Kyle Harrison. I don't trust him to put the ball where he wants to. I really don't. I mean, he generally isn't bad at necessarily going high with that four-seamer, and it is a 1.6 VAA, which is, oh boy. Like, you see above 1, like 1.2, like, that's good. That's good stuff. Like 1.4 is like, I feel like it's the WWE meme or whatever, is I get excited in my chair, but it's a 1.6, and that should absolutely thrive if he's able to truly get that upstairs all the time. But against the lefties last year, that four-seamer had a 4.2% swinging strike rate.
Yeah.
Sure, that's about 100 pitches thrown, so sure, but 4 whiffs on 96 of them thrown to lefties, and there's nothing else.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think that's related. I think that's like they know it's coming. It's like,
right.
He really threw a ton of fastballs, and the secondary stuff wasn't there.
Yeah. It's a 31% usage on the curveball to lefties and 4% swing strike rate, 61% strike rate on that. Not to mention the four seamer, sub 60% strike rate. And to me, strike rate is something I've been focusing more and more on because it's just like, well, you have to be able to do that. Or if you're not, then you have to be so
have to have
good
a slider.
at
You have maybe a slider that you can always get in the zone.
Right. Like the cutter stuff that we talk about, Woodruff slider is always stuck in my head about you talking about, like, not necessarily the wipeout slider, but that's such an important pitch for him because he's able to get that away for a strike to a righty all the time. And that works. I'm like, right. Cause he needs to establish that. And that opens the door, you know?
But how bad is the strike rate on the four seam? Is it like Edward
58%.
Cabrera bad?
It's kind of, I mean, 58% is like, that's not good. You can't do that. If you're throwing that 57% of the time, you're going to just walk a ton of guys.
Well, like, this is another interesting thing that comes out is that ABS, so he had the 16% walk rate in AAA, and that was on ABS. And so you'll see some inflated walk rates on guys who have okay command grade. So just as an aside, Jared Jones, I think his command is fine. Right. And he's a prospect for the Pirates. I think that was all ABS. And so I think to some extent, his command is not as bad as that 16% looks like. I think it's okay, but I agree it's not great. Yeah. And that's part of the picture. But then what also fascinates me is that people that normally have this kind of fastball, and I was talking to somebody at the winter meetings and they said, I don't use stuff grades that much anymore, which is, it's a great sign. We've come up with something finally and they're moving on. But he said they're useful, but I want to build arsenals based on biomechanical markers. Like I want to build a player, based on his biomechanics. Mm-hmm. And so if you look at Kyle Harrison, you say, okay, this guy with this kind of fastball, he's like a pronator, because he's got this two plane. It's kind of a sinker, two seam thing. He's a pronator. Yeah. But his changeup's not good. He doesn't really turn over a good changeup. Yeah. So I would normally say with this kind of guy, sweeper. Sure. Well, I mean, his curveball's kind of like this big thing that maybe it's like the low. I'm looking at our own GIF of it and just kind of sense of it. It is more of that vertical drop, but it keeps being called a slurve. So it's like it's got okay horizontal, but it also has so much drop. I think it just looks like a big old thing that righties just see forever. Yeah. Right. And it's possible. Yeah. I think it might be a dead zone curveball. We talk about dead zone with fastballs. Oh man. And we talk about dead zone with fastballs, where dead zone fastball means not enough vertical, not enough horizontal, sort of average. Yeah. And when you look at this curveball, it's not big enough sweeper to be different horizontally. And it's not like a power. And there's a name for it. Have you seen this? No. This is a trend. It's the year of the death ball. Oh no. Pastor, what have you done, man? What have you done? This is okay. Really quickly, are you in or out on Jordan Montgomery where he's going in fantasy right now? Out mostly. Yeah, he's got to be, right? It's like the death ball has created Jordan Montgomery as like this almost top 40 starter. And it's like he's the same. He's just a guy. Yeah, he's right. A Toby. Yeah, it's a Toby. Hey, that's a good. It works. But it's firm. So for anybody who hasn't heard, a death ball, the one I think of is because it's so beautiful. The beautiful one is Peter Fairbanks. It's that just like, and I bet you like Kimbrel is like, I haven't looked at it. I can't say it's Kimbrel, but it's like power one plane curveball. It's like that true hammer. It's just like a pang. Yeah, right. And it doesn't have horizontal. And then sort of the opposite of the death ball, which was the last big pitch, is the sweeper. And if you think about Kyle Harrison's curveball, it's in between the two. It's not a sweeper and it's not the death ball. It's just blap. Yep. But we just call it a blap ball. It's the blap. It's a dead zone curveball, maybe. And it's it's just so weird. And it also makes me think of like, okay, well, it's a damn good fastball, at least. I mean, even without the IVB, it's a good fastball. It's big velo for a lefty. It's pretty good. It's like really good horizontal. Yeah. Like wait, this is the curveball. Yeah. That's dead zone. I mean, what it doesn't have enough arm side break to be a sweeper. See, it's below there.
It's induced vertical breaks really high, which you don't want it to be.
It's not
at
good
all.
enough to be like it's not like the Adam Wainwright,
Right. Like you want to see on a curveball, I've seen like sliders here. Like, and you want this to be closer
and if it's
to
a slider, it
20
has
down
to be
here.
over 85.
Right.
And it's
Yeah,
82.
it's like 82. It's like, what are you doing? Okay. You exist. This
Show
is
the
not it.
fastball now.
Oh yeah, sure, I will. Let me get rid of this. It takes a moment. This is Kyle Bland's PLV apps, by the way, which are just invaluable. He added I asked the date range. I was like, hey, I just want to make sure like the whirly bird slider for Pavetta. And it's okay, cool. And then like within a day, we had a date range. I'm like, this is the greatest feeling in the world. Thank you so much, Kyle.
I need a Kyle Bland.
Yeah, right. We all need a Kyle Bland. Yeah, here's Kyle Harrison's four seam. This is what I was talking about. The IVB
terrible vertical break, but so much
really
arm side. Like this is a true two seamer.
And
with good extension.
Yeah,
and like that velo number doesn't look good, but he's a starter and he's a lefty, so it's actually pretty good.
It's like Tarek Skubal, actually. That's why that 95-96, because his doesn't have a good shape at all. Actually, it's kind of why I'm out on Tarek Skubal.
I know, and the steamer projection is amazing.
Yeah, I'm gonna talk more about that with Sport tomorrow morning. And by the way, we're doing a fireside chat at 10 a.m. tomorrow. We're adding an extra hour to PitchCon. Because we have this, we have a brand new special event at the 1 p.m. and I didn't want to miss the fireside chat with Sport. So we're going to talk about Tarek Skubal and all this stuff then. 10 a.m. It's good. Extra hour pitch because we need it. We need 56 hours, not 55.
We need the air horns.
John
People are going to need the air horns at 10 in the morning.
Oh my God. But yeah, so Kyle Harrison's fastball here. The VAA though is so good.
Yeah.
And what he also adds. I can show you.
And from that spray chart, you can see what you're talking about. He's pretty good at keeping it up in the zone.
Well, this is I love this. This is what Kyle has added to this, which is actually, let's try this one instead.
Like high and away is like a cold zone for most hitters. It's like the new low and away. You know what I mean? Like high and away is really hard for people to cover.
Yes and no. Okay,
well,
so I have a huge thing against
there's a lot of the high ball hitters are like the Carlos Correa, Alex Bregman, Yankum guys. You know, they're high and tight.
So like, okay, the worry I have, you're right. I'm agreeing with you that like
Acuña's only hole is high and away.
Like this is good, but the problem to me is that it's too close to this, and this is like the worst thing you can do. Like to me, as a four seamer, this is like you just push it out and you go. Right.
And also there's a lot that's not in the zone.
Right. Yeah. Well, yeah, there's that too. And this is like, I remember my college coach at 0-2 pitches, we had to throw away fastballs as our first pitch, like off the plate. And I was like, this is the stupidest thing I've ever heard.
It's not good to practice. I'm going to practice a ball over and over again.
Right. And like eventually I just like kind of maneuvered around it by doing like a shudo rather, which is like, the backdoor two seamer. That was landing off the plate, but the umpire would give it to me. But literally, my first ever at bat in college, I threw an 0-2 fastball that was off the plate away, and the guy hit a single to center. And I was like, I'm never doing that again. But I mean,
this is passable. I think the fastball stuff. Like I would say I'm good on Kyle Harrison's fastball, even if the model just says it's good to okay. Like it's maybe an above average pitch. So, I'm just surprised that people can't build stuff off of it.
Right. This is so fascinating to me. I love this actually. It's like left-handed hitters are seeing four seamers inside to Kyle Harrison, and the ICRs on it, it's 40%.
And because those are pitches moving in on the lefties.
Yeah,
so he's throwing it on the inner half and moving in on them.
Yeah, that's good actually.
Oh, that's like a righty on righty sinker, right?
Right, exactly. So I'm cool with that, and that's the thing I really have against this is like. For a guy like Kyle Harrison, I think the number one skill I look for in lefties is being able to put a fastball inside of righties. And if you look at that game against the Reds, I'm pretty sure that Kyle Harrison was,
it's a lot of the way. It was a lot of the umpire helped him. It was a ton of fastballs. I was trying to wait for the changeups and the sliders because I wanted, or the breaking balls. I wanted to see them. And like,
so here this is
so many fastballs,
right? Yeah, it's just all these over the plate like this, and like he had 16 called strikes, not 7 whiffs. He had 37% CSW on it, and like they just couldn't touch these, right? And not to mention the curveball spot. Let's see if I can get this to look.
Look, the red is fastball, right? So he's not.
Yeah, and then curveballs are. I'll take this all day if you can command it like this, like in the zone and right underneath it with the curveball too.
But then look at your curveball heat map.
Oh yeah,
He
yeah.
places
Let's
it.
go to that one. Yeah, that'll be fun.
Because that might actually be my biggest outlier in that start is he put his curveball in good places. If you look at the
Yeah.
heat map for the curveball, he does not put it in good places.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So let's take a look at that really quickly. Again, this is using the PLV pitches app, and it's so helpful.
It just looks like he
So yeah,
hangs.
he doesn't have low lock on this.
He
It's
hangs.
all this. Look at this. So the left
What is
inside to the
that?
lefty.
Maybe he just doesn't throw it much. I don't even know what that is. Is that
Oh,
that's trying to be a front door? Like he's
yeah.
trying
Yeah,
to.
don't do that.
But it also looks like he hits them a lot. Or the hitter stands here and gets hit.
So this is the thing that like I think you would agree with this a bit too. There are certain guys when it comes to also like Stuff Plus, even if it said it liked it, to me it's like, all right, can he locate it? Like Graham Ashcraft's the perfect example of this. Of like, we know that cutter is so filthy, but like the dude cannot locate that thing. He just like, it's an absolute shotgun blast. And with Kyle Harrison, and even with this fastball and this curveball, it's like the other element is there are certain ones that we know the command just isn't good. You know, it's not a question of if it will be good or not. And the fun for me is like, cool, I get to watch more, and like this is my job. Like I'm happy we had the Stuff Plus as like the baseline, and then it's like, okay, now I need to do the work of discerning if it is something he can do properly, right?
And honestly, if you have this type of profile, then it puts a lot more pressure on the Stuff Plus. Like, the only way out for these guys is to outstuff it. And so like Ashcraft, like I guess for him, I'd wish more pitches, you know, just like throw everything to the middle of the zone. It'll be scatter shot, but you'll have 2 of them will be amazing Stuff Plus. You keep them kind of rock them back and forth, do your best, do everything but the command because you don't have the command. So that's how I tell Harrison is you can't do this on one pitch, you know, because you don't have great command. So it's not like it's not gonna be Mo. You're gonna be Mariano out there like dying. You're not doing that. So you need to find a breaking ball that works. And it's so frustrating because it looks to the eye test that looks like an okay curveball, dude.
Yeah, that looks pretty cool. But
I think it's an average. It's like somehow average-ish and just like a dead zone curveball. And
I mean, it doesn't have
they've been trying to have him throw. I don't think he has the mechanics to throw the death ball.
No, I don't think
so. Death ball is the over the top guys, you know. So you know, I think he needs to kind of firm it up, not have as much drop, and really try to do a sweeper. But then you get into then you start having platoon splits where he's a lefty, he's throwing a big old sweeper, and everybody says the sweeper's harder to command. It's bigger movement profile.
That's what we need to add to him.
Like let's take a guy who has no command and add this thing. And yet, you know, there's enough there. He made it. He's like this. I think he's my number 75. You know, it's like just barely hanging on to relevance. Like could come in spring and just be like, oh, this gyro slider, I can actually command this. There are people that you know take a huge step forward even without a huge stuff pitch that they can, like, it's like you were talking about Woodruff, like, you know, it's like, oh, I have a breaking ball that I can do at 2-0, and now I'm totally different. And now the changeup just needs to be good enough, and I'm, you know, and I can even throw the slurve sometimes, and all of a sudden he becomes a 4-pitch pitcher because of this gyro slider. And they tried that. The Giants tried that, and they, you know, I did reach out to somebody who said I don't think it's going to work, but
I can't tell you how many times that's happened to me where I'm like, this is the only thing. Like, yeah, he's not going to do that.
It's not going to work.
I think one of them was Wilson Ramos to me with the Mets. I was so infuriated. I think I've shared this with you where he could not frame. Like he would make pitchers actively worse by like catching a slider that'd be at the bottom of the zone and then just grab it like that and pull it out of the zone as he catches it, and then set up fastballs like middle, like almost dead center, but like slightly away, but then middle, and then they would hit that spot and it would get crushed. And I literally said when Zach Wheeler signed with the Phillies, like, I'm happy it's just not the Mets. Now he's going to be great because it's not Wilson Ramos. And
I wonder if there's anybody still out there like that. I you know, off the top of my head, like Christian Betancourt is not, I don't think, a great framer.
Oh man.
But a lot of the bad framers got sort of out of the game.
Oh, is that right? I guess so. I mean, like, there's just, I feel like that's the way with everything, though. Like, that's a skill that everyone's expected to have now, right?
Yeah. Jeff Sullivan, you know, before he went to work for the Rays, one of his last pieces was about how the difference between the best framers and the worst framers was getting smaller every year.
Oh man, look at that. Good.
Yeah,
For all of us pitchers, we need that. Make us look as good as possible, please.
But I think that's part of why Harrison, did show better walk rates in the majors. Was it's Patrick Bailey, it's a human.
Yeah.
So I and then when you're in a park, another thing that occurs to me when I think of Kyle Harrison is I was looking at Edward Cabrera's home and away splits.
Right.
And DVR, my brother from another mother, was talking about Edward Cabrera's walk rate is like untenable. Like if you just look at 15-16% walk rates, like there's nobody who's like done that year after year.
But then if you go 13%, you win a Cy Young.
Right. I was like, yeah, there's Blake Snell. But then I looked at Edward Cabrera's home and away splits, and I was like, man, if you walk a guy in an extreme pitcher's park, and then it's really hard to hit homers, yeah, they're gonna maybe single some of those guys home, but you're not gonna give up the grand slam or the 3-run homer that really gives you that 3 innings, 7 runs that you can get in like Yankee Stadium or something,
Right.
So Edward Cabrera, to me, in fantasy at least, is a useful pitcher this year that I might have to be careful with on the road and stuff. But Kyle Harrison is definitely going to give people good starts this year.
It's funny you mentioned Edward Cabrera because I've been thinking so much about him. And I'm with you that, these walk rates are ridiculous. The 15% walk rate this past year, it was 11% in 2022. And obviously it's like, okay, the 4-seamer, he just can't throw for strikes, right? That's just what we know. However, he actually is a 62% strike rate against right-handers. Believe it or not.
I noticed he had a 97 location plus, and I'm like, that's borderline. That can actually work.
But the thing is, against left-handers last year, it was a 54% strike rate. And to me, that's fixable. Like it's surprising to see that too, because generally when you see when you go against opposite handedness, it looks so open. The strike zone is so nice and lovely, and you can just throw it easily over the plate because it's where your arm is coming. You're not going to hit them. It feels like it's free, right?
Yeah. There's a mental component. Charlie Morton says he likes throwing his curveball more to lefties, I think, because he feels like if he misses, it's going to be like off the plate in a place that they're not going to hit it anyway.
Right.
Whereas somehow if he misses to righties, he might leave it over the middle of the plate.
I can't tell you how many elbows I hit with that curveball in high school. And
trying to
never called it. They always do this, and it would be over the plate even. And it's like, I like lefties. I like throwing my curveball to lefties now. But to me, it's like, I can't get this out of my head. Edward Cabrera's mechanics also, when I compare him to Kyle Harrison, are much smoother. It's a lot more straightforward toward the plate. It's not as erratic. It's not like the Andrew Heaney, Sean Manaea.
What do you not like about do you not like that extreme close thing that Kyle Harrison, how he sets up? Or
it's the arm angle. It's it's also the quick turns. It's a lot more cross body than like with Edward Cabrera, who's much more directed straight towards home plate. And it surprises me a bit that he has such a high walk rate, because traditionally with the kind of mechanics that Edward Cabrera has, I'll put it up for everyone to see, it is much more generating toward home plate. And I feel like it's an adjustment that he can have. I mean, his stuff with his 4-seamer right now, he's way out of the zone, but up. He's trying to elevate it a ton. He's trying to go up and in. And it's kind of surprising to me because he has such a good changeup that goes down and away. And honestly, you can just kind of play off of each other.
Like throw some low away fastballs to lefties.
Just do that. It's okay. And that changeup will make it good enough. And you don't really need to
excel. They'll have to honor that. They'll take some of those pitches because
exactly right.
They think they're changeups.
It's what Spencer Strider said, right? That was his counter to learning a changeup
game. Yeah.
And it's honestly the thing that I think Shane Bieber's got to do is that low and away fastball. He's started to get higher up, but he's got this is something I'm discovering.
They can keyhole you, right? If it's hard, if it's high, it's hard.
Right.
And if it's low, it's soft.
Like what I'm realizing is there are a lot of guys with a good IVB, but they don't have enough VAA to keep it up. And it's kind of your guys with the higher release of points that come down. And instead of keeping that up, because it won't really work there. Like Tanner Bybee tries to kind of do that, but no, man, that's like a sub 10% swing strike rate. He says, stay birdie. And I'm starting to realize that if you have any decent IVB, but you have really bad VAA, it might be better to live low because then you get those called strikes. You're actually able to pin it low because it feels like it's going to go down out of the zone. It's a steeper VAA then, so it's harder to get lift on that anyway. And then it stays up and you get that called strike. And that is the Zach Gallen method. Like that's what he does. He has good IVB, but it's not the greatest everything else. And then he gets those changeups down. He gets those curveballs down. He has like a 24-25% called strike rate on his four seamer. And the time that Gallen had problems, he was doing the Blake Snell blueprint. He was trying to do that thing. And I'm like, oh, maybe that's like actually a new avenue I never really explored before. So Shane Bieber, you just got to get it lower, which is, oh boy, I've never said that one before.
But there is like a minimum level of command, you know, that you're sort of talking about that, you know, you're looking for in terms of maybe sort of eye test. But there's also, you know, what I've seen in my numbers is like, if you're looking at location plus like 95, is a number that, like overall, that's a sort of divider. And that's why I was like, you know, Edward Cabrera at 97 could be a Blake Snell. But you know, somebody when he was the year before, even he was more like 94, 93, where it looked like he was really going to be. So I think there's a chance he goes into that. And I wonder if you can use it on the pitch level. So Kyle Harrison's location plus 102 on the fastball. So decent enough, 90 on the slurve.
Yeah.
And that's what we saw in that. That's what we saw in that
and
heat map.
It's not even about like, even if it's at, let's say even 97, the way I see it though is, especially for like fantasy purposes, the volatility of that is still there. It's not like every game you throw two of them, one's gonna be good, one's gonna be bad or something, right? It's just their days he has feel, their days he doesn't. And
that's gonna be like a very high strikeout hitter or something.
Yeah. Like it's heading inducing pitcher stifling the entire roster, right? It's this, but really it's like the inconsistencies. And you know, we see this all the time. There are ebbs and flows of the season where guys are really just grooving it. They really feel it and they get there. And the greats are the ones that recognize what that is in those moments, are able to hold on to it longer. But I see this in Kyle Harrison. It's just, there's some days you feel that location, you feel that coming out of your hand. And I can't really believe that it's, I don't know, like it's just like an average location every time. It's too much up and down. And I think it's a product of the mechanics.
Yeah, statistically 98 location plus, like it's not in a big sample, but it's in a big enough one for me to think. I think it still could be what's holding him back, but I think I want him to have a good pitching coach. I wanted him to have Bailey, you know.
Oh yeah.
And now he doesn't. So I'm really hoping that JP Martinez, you know, sees something, you know, that he can work with. But then you also think like how many pitching coaches he had on the way up?
Sure.
How many pitching coaches? Where does he go somewhere in the off season? So he's had like 4 or 5 pitching coaches who put their hands in this already. You know, he's had a couple different pitching coordinators. Like they've tried a lot of things. So if we're sitting here being like, well, if only he could throw this gyro slider, you know.
Yeah. I hope it comes together. I mean, again, with the VAA like he does, it really helps him a ton, just from the get-go. Yeah. We've seen how that can have a big effect. And if he's sitting 94, I mean, you know, let's say even improves that slightly, like, well, that can have a massive effect.
And the last thing that you know, on Harrison that I find interesting is that there are players that have good fastballs and don't have good secondaries. And so generally
Zach Wheeler.
Well, that's the really good outcome.
Yeah.
You know?
right.
I have another name on his team that's like the not as good outcome.
Who's that?
Taijuan Walker.
On his team? Oh, on Wheeler's team. Oh my God. Yeah. I was like, he's like, when did you go to the Giants? Did he ever go to the Giants? Okay.
No.
Yeah.
Zach Wheeler, big fastball, good outcomes, like sort of put it together, figured out and added a sweeper this year. Like all these things added. Taijuan Walker, great fastball. It's still his best pitch. And for some reason, the secondaries haven't, you know, come off. And there may be like a more advanced way to think about this, but I just know that for some it works out and some it doesn't. I think about this with Taj Bradley. Yep. You know, here's a guy who has a great fastball. He's struggling to put the secondary pieces around it. Which way is he going to go? And I wonder, you know, extension is a funny thing because Logan Gilbert has it in spades. Kyle Harrison has it in spades. And Taj Bradley has it in spades. And I just wonder, if extension, if there's something there mechanically that makes it hard to add other pitches, like because you're
really
hitting this spot way out in front, and you're right, and like if you think about extension, I think it is hard actually to throw. If you have great extension, it's hard to throw like a great curveball, from with that extension. Like Glass now is one of the exceptions because you're so far out there, and curveball, on some level you have to yank it a little bit. Like it's hard to be like, I'm gonna get 6'7" out there and yank it,
So I mean, so on Glasnow's point, I mean, it is a good one, but it also is not a consistent one. And other ones I'm thinking about extension are Wheeler, who that's Aaron Nola actually shockingly has incredible extension. And I'm like, hey, more four seamers upstairs, please, because what are you doing?
A great curveball and a great changeup. So it's
with Wheeler and Nola, both of them are low IVB guys relatively to the field. You wouldn't really expect it, right? Yeah. So that's super.
There's something more to be teased out there because there's extension with ride, so you're kind of an over the top extender, and then there's extension without ride where you're a sideways extender.
Yeah. That's such an interesting thought. Like Freddie Peralta struggled a long time to get his.
Yes, there you go. That's a great example. He's the extender. Like he was like he didn't used to have number one extension in the league, and he couldn't put together a breaking ball on top of it.
That's so fast. I mean, now he has 3 extra pitches, which is so funny. He had a changeup showing up in September. Freddie Peralta, like, what are you doing? You were already like the best guy in the second half. Fine, not Blake Snell, but you know what I mean. And he's like, yeah, but I got to change him now. Okay.
I gotta go. I gotta go push Tarek Skubal down a couple of my rankings.
Tarek Skubal. What does he
That's
have?
That's off topic. Who's your guy? We're halfway through. You got to debut your guy.
Okay, I had. This is a good transition because if you want to talk about really a great extension guy, it's Cutter Crawford. I'm so in on Cutter Crawford.
Yeah, I wish you would pick someone that I hate, but I
why would I do that?
Yeah, I don't know. I am in.
Cutter Crawford is someone that is just flying up my draft board because actually it took so long to get to him. I didn't get to the Red Sox in my rotation pieces. And I was kind of intrigued to be like, okay, cool. Yeah, let me just see what's going on. I really just want to talk about the entire Red Sox, really. Because I think my least favorite one is Giolito, which is kind of funny.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's weird that they decided to do that instead of Sale. I didn't really get that. But Crawford, by Stuff Plus, he has 5 pitches that are above average.
Right? He has so much. He's so filthy.
And the last one's the split finger, which performs all right.
Oh man, I didn't even consider that one. For me, I mean, look, Cutter Crawford to me entering this year, we're like, hey, he actually has a really good PLV on his 4-seamer and his slider. And he wasn't using his slider enough, and he was overusing his cutter, which ironically I didn't like for Crawford at first. But
he had to have a good cutter. I mean,
yeah, he had to. He actually, I've shared this before to people, but he's the only one that has an Easter egg on his player page at Pitcher List. I don't know if you guys know this, if you've noticed it at all. Props to you. But you'll see on Cutter Crawford's player page here that his cutter is spelled a little differently.
Nice.
It's got that lovely K instead.
I'm in the pitch type card. Will it show up there?
Oh yeah, it's here. Oh, and down in this stuff too. Yeah, it's in here. But for Cutter Crawford, really the only problem I see, I mean, first and foremost, his ICRs and everything are great. And just his ICR being, of course, on contact, you want to see under 40% on everything. If it's a fastball under 40%, beautiful. If it's under 35% as a secondary, that's great. To me, that's just a better all-encompassing, hey, balls in play stat. And I pair that with strike rate. We have a new stat, strike minus ICR rate that's coming out in a week and a half now for PLX that Kyle Bland talked about earlier on in PitchCon. But you see the super high strike rates too. He has 4 pitches that are above a 64% strike rate here, and it's curveball, slider, cutter, and 4-seamer. Yeah. And all underneath 40% ICR. And the only problem I found, I believe it was either against righties or lefties, is that the ICR on the 4-seamer was just too high. And everything else was okay and great. It was that's the only thing. He just saw a few too many hits on it. And then I realized, oh, he's just throwing it slightly too much in the zone. Like that is a 48% ICR. I'm like, what's going on? If you go to the player page or the app for Cutter Crawford, it's like it's high lock, but it's inside the zone high lock, right?
This is the fastball or the cutter?
This is the four seamer. So it's 73%.
Yeah, it's a lot
here,
in
right?
the zone. That's right.
And so it drives me nuts. I'm like, dude, you have, look at this. This is, oh my gosh. Okay.
18. I mean, he's
0.4.
Yeah,
okay, so never mind. That's what I'm thinking of, not the
league
extension. I
in
take that back.
Vertical break for sure.
So much. He's over the top more, but still 18.4 is incredible. And I'll take a 1. Normally, when we see that really high release point, we see it kind of like 0.7, 0.6. We see it more negatively. And the fact that the VA isn't harming this, and you have that IVB, probably tells me
it has some arm side break. It's not even
that's
zero
true
that
too.
way.
Yeah, no cut. Thankfully, I'm anti-cut. I call it the plan 1,000 cuts.
Well, because then he would have like a cut fastball, a cutter, a slider, and a curveball, and it would just be like, what you need to have something that goes the other way.
Yeah, great point. Right. So as you look at this, he kills lefties. He actually gets us here, but this is too much here inside the zone, the top third. And to me, it's just like, oh, just that's the only adjustment. Just like just a little bit more. That's it, and he wins.
I think the other thing that is tough about Cutter Crawford, and this is, doesn't really have to do anything with what we're talking about, but I think that's a really, really tough park to play in.
Oh, yeah, sure.
I think that just people like see that green monster, and righties are just like, drooling over it, and lefties, and it doesn't really show up in his numbers because his batting average on balls in play was fine. But, the high home run rate, is that due to his stuff, or is that due to Parks? He had some home run rate problems in the minors, but what is his home run rate going to be going forward? He does have a good approach against lefties with that cutter.
Yeah.
And lefties can hit homers there by pulling it down the line, but I think that maybe it gets even into people's heads. And for last year for Cutter Crawford, home 6 ERA, away 249.
Oh my gosh.
And when I tried to look at like his pitch selection home and away, and there was like not anything there. So I kind of tend to think that, and I also did an article asking a bunch of people, pitchers, like where do you like the mound?
As in like the actual dirt and everything.
Yeah. Where does the mound feel good? Because Chris Bassett was like, there are taller mounds in the league. Book it.
Yes.
Don't let anyone tell you any different.
Nelson Figueroa says stuff like this too.
Tampa Bay is about like tall.
The bullpens would be higher for the opposing team.
That's not in the article. I took that out. But there was a bunch of people saying New York, the Mets have different sizes.
Taller bullpen is what Figueroa told us.
So that when they go on the field, they're like,
believe that. That's amazing, because it really feels so good. They come out and it's worse. And like, what's going on?
Yeah.
How messed up is that?
Boston came in as a bottom 3-5 mound. Like it came up a bunch of times as a place people didn't like. But as I explored this story, there was the psychology of the park, and I realized that the size of the mound was often defined by the backstop and how close the backstop was and how close the fans were. And it became this sort of like, I feel low because they're in, know, there was one little thing that was amazing. The mound in San Francisco is actually higher. The grounds crew confirmed. But home plate is also higher, and it's because of drainage. So they made the difference between the mound and home plate the same as everywhere else.
So they just scooped it down underneath in front?
And so I was asking the guy, so if you're running from third base to home, is there some point where you're like running uphill?
Yeah, right.
And he's like, yes, we're talking millimeters though.
That's amazing. But
it's enough for the water to drain, because it's at sea level. It's actually maybe even below a little bit. And so they needed to do something to kind of drain it. Any case, long story short, people felt like in Boston, the walls were coming in on them. The backstop is close. You don't get any foul ground to kind of, catch those foul balls.
Oakland, that must be number 1.
The green monster is like over your shoulder being like, well, okay, don't give up anything over this way. You're just like, like I could bet you like pitching in Boston, and I think they should do something. I think they should think about this. I think I don't know what to do about it, but they have obviously had a really hard time developing pitching. And it's not for nothing. Like Brian Bayo and Cutter Crawford are good pitchers. If they had come up in San Diego or San Francisco or in Seattle, if they had come up in Seattle, we would be talking about how the Red Sox in Seattle, the Seattle Red Sox, have like this great new starting duo. I think that they're that quality. But Boston masks it, makes it harder for them to break in. I think that and Bill Petty had some research that extreme hitters parks affects the win percentage of the team.
Oh, wow. So like negatively.
Yeah. Now, I don't know how much like Coors is just screwing that because I don't think Denver's a really well-run team or anything. But, I could see it just like developing young pitching is hard enough. Having them come up and every mistake they make is just blasted.
Yeah, it's amplified and everything. That's why Seattle avoids the PCL, right? That's why they go from AA to the majors a lot.
Yeah, and anybody who had Vegas, when Blue Jays had Vegas, they never sent their guys to Vegas. They always skipped that.
Oh man, I didn't even consider that with the whole Oakland A's thing going to Vegas. Of like that's gonna be a difference, right? Like you go from Oakland A's, like the greatest pitchers park. Yeah. All of a sudden out to Las Vegas. I didn't even consider that.
People forget that Vegas is at altitude.
Yeah. Oh man.
Well, I think they're going to have to build a dome. I mean, you can't play in summer in Vegas. So
that's true.
It does help. It'll help with some things, but maybe not everything.
Yeah. I mean, my whole end game with Pitcher List is to own a baseball team, specifically the Colorado Rockies. And my first action is to move out of Colorado.
Oh, okay. My dream is to pressurize the stadium.
Just make it like the Simpsons dome of like the city or whatever. Just
so that when you walk in, there's like a like have you ever been to
like Spaceballs? They open up for the planes to come in and
or have you been to like a butterfly exhibit?
No, I have not.
Oh, you've got it. I mean, it's beautiful.
I got to do. I should add that on my list. I don't know.
Hey, butterflies, they're beautiful. I don't know why I said that way. When like they do the thing so the butterflies can't get out, where it's like double doors, and the first door opens and there's kind of like a little suction effect, and then the second door opens.
Oh, really?
You need to have double doors everywhere in the stadium.
Oh my gosh! Yeah, it needs to be an airlock. It needs to, full-on sci-fi movie. Let's actually have Colorado Rockies play in a spaceship above where we've normalized gravity. Yeah. That's it. I found it, guys. We
solved it.
We did it. But I mean, so to bring us back to the Red Sox.
Cutter Crawford.
Yeah. Well, yeah. The thing about it, though, is Crawford got better with those secondaries as it went on, though. And that's what got me excited. It's like, I didn't like that cutter initially.
And then how he used them, or in velo and movement?
Just in location, I would think. Just like how he merged everything.
Got bigger. That might be good.
The slider was utilized more as well, and I think that made it so that the whole mix felt deadlier when that cutter came in. He didn't quite.
Yeah, he became more of like a starter. Yeah, you look at that slider, more usage as it went on. So good,
and the fact that all these pitches are well located, better than I expected. And are missing bats, and he's also going to be going every 5 days now and can go 6 innings. Like the Red Sox, like, yeah, whatever, okay, good. Go.
I guess like one thing that bothers me a little bit, and this is because he popped the year before too, but the year before 12 starts against 21 appearances, and I think that some of his stuff numbers were kind of inflated by his relief appearances. But last year we're looking at 23 starts in 31 appearances. I think it's who he is. There's still this like 4 ERA against a 3 xERA without a problem in BABIP, without, I mean, I guess a little no strand rate problem. So it's like what was unlucky about last year? Like what is going to get better than he did last
honestly,
year?
I would just take
last year again.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it was a 4 ERA, 111 WHIP, and generally when I see that, it's like, okay, cool, untimely home runs,
and the lead, untimely home runs, I guess,
and then like 26% K rate, 7% walk rate. It's and what improves, I would also say, that location of that four seamer, right, just getting a little further up, so it's not a 48% ICR. That's the biggest problem, and it's like, oh, that's totally fine. Like,
And with
Like,
that
there are
walk
other
rate, he can actually walk a few more. He can
exactly.
spray it above the zone.
He didn't
a
need
little
to
more.
have a 73% strike rate, right, against righties.
What if he has like a 8% walk rate, but gets
Phenomenal.
the home run under 1
Right.
per
Hit
9?
per 9 goes down. It's 7.5. That can be closer to 7 as well. And like,
Yeah.
it's all there. And what's really nice to me is seeing a pitcher who there's different levels of command. And when I see shotgun blasts versus precision, I always can think, cool, adjustments can be made. Good example that I often use is George Kirby's slider being more distant off of the plate, but all clumped together off the plate. And then this year being much more over the plate. And just kind of taking that and grabbing it over as the
Kirby's
general
guy you
area is
want.
there.
Like,
right?
miss the plate more often, dude.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Kirby, please. He's the prime example of that, like putting your fastball in the wrong place. And that up and away stuff. It's his ICR was like 50% on his 4-seamer to right-handers because he kept doing that. And I'm like, dude, just go here. We know this works here. You're so good at this. You have the first percentile called strike rate on 4-seamers, but the 99th percentile on swinging strikes. Like,
wait, that's Kirby?
Yeah, that's his 4-seamer.
Wait, he has first percentile called strikes?
Yes, on his 4-seamer.
So 10%. Bad?
Yeah, well, it's my understanding of his swing rate is so high. So guys, when it's in the zone, he's putting so much in the zone.
Because
so they're like,
it's not his best pitch. So they want to swing at it. They love it.
Right. And
so he should miss the zone more often
for them. Right. So he should go out of it. Exactly. Yeah. And that's like, well, okay, clearly you're giving into them a little bit, even though you see the swing strike rate doesn't matter because they crush it.
It's hard to complain about George Kirby. My God, like he's like a pitching savant. Like,
well, that's the thing. I love him so much. That's why I have so much
belief. Want to win the side.
Yeah, he's gonna do it because, like, I'm like, oh, sweet, awesome. This is the thing. Just do that. You're like, oh, okay, cool. Let's go do that.
I mean, and he's the type of guy where he's like, I'm gonna do this thing, and then he just does it.
I'll throw a knuckleball, whatever.
Yeah, right. And it was like a good one.
Yeah, he's insane. I mean, there's also the thing about like the Seattle Mariners with their splitters that I don't know how to feel. Like with Gilbert and it was good, and then it was bad, and whatever. And then
I had an executive point out something that I wanted to tell you.
Yeah, what's up?
He said that splitters perform better than you expect given their swing rates.
Oh, that's interesting.
And zone rates.
They perform.
I know that you don't love the splitter, and I was thinking like maybe even Kyle Harrison should throw one because if he can't pronate that well, maybe he should actually do the over the top. Some of the over the top.
I want to clarify. I love splitters. I just hate them as number 2 pitches.
But it's worked for Kyle Gossman, and it's worked for a bunch of relievers, and that's where it was pointed out to me was they were talking about Kirby Yates, and they said, yeah, Kirby Yates has like a 30% zone rate on the splitter.
Yeah,
you'd think that people would stop swinging at it, and he said there's something about the mechanics of a splitter that it just looks so much like a fastball that people will swing at it even if you have terrible zone rates.
Yeah, I mean, Kodai Senga is killing it with his.
He has a terrible zone rate, and you want to be like, oh, regression's coming. They're just going to lay off the ghost fork eventually. No, they're not going. Maybe they won't.
Well, I mean, the problem I have with Kodai Senga is more of like, how good actually is that cutter and 4-seamer? But then I like the 4-seamer more, but then he can't actually locate it well. And is the cutter going to perform as well again? There's going to
be some regression for him. I don't think the cutter's very good.
But right, I mean, the thing is, okay, you take away the cutter from Kodai Senga, there's no way he performs as well as he does, right?
Right.
I mean, that's kind of my problem with splitters.
So
is that
maybe
that's
you target
pitch I'm in.
You target the cutter as a hitter,
right? And that's the pitch that I think I kept watching. It had lower ICR rates than I expected, and I just watching this, I'm like, how is this happening? It doesn't quite compute with me. But maybe the 4-seamer and the cutter just look that much different, and it's just that hard you're just guessing between the two. I don't know. But that's the number 3, right? And that's okay. Gosman is a weird one. And the thing is also the 4-seamer gets destroyed. But the thing is the whip is always high though. I mean, it's a 118 whip, 124.
And that's why he needs to have like a usable breaker, even if he doesn't.
And the sliders. I mean, that's that is usable. Like I don't know if you know Big Mouth, but that is Steve's ghost or whatever. Is that slider? I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, but that's all I'm gonna say. It's fine. But it's like not the one you want to have. It is a thing.
I get it. Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
But when I look at Cutter Crawford, here's a name that just popped in my head, which is really weird. But I think relevant. Shane Green. So Shane Green comes up and has a pretty decent fastball and has 3 breaking balls, right?
Yeah.
And I have multiple conversations with him over the years, like, how do you keep them separate? Do you keep them separate? Do they morph together? Is this a problem? You know, and he's like, yeah, no, maybe, I don't know. I just try to, I try to keep them separate. But over time, he kind of did stop throwing 3. I talked to Max Scherzer. Here's another name that I think is relevant. Max Scherzer has like 4 breaking balls. They don't all get separated out in all of our systems, but he has like a hard slider, a soft slider. He really does have. And when I talked to him most recently, he said the number one thing he works on start to start, the number one thing that was missing after his injury is separating his breaking balls and keeping the shapes different and commanding them. So is there any risk with Cutter Crawford being, like we talked about, like, is that fastball going to start to get some cut, because everything cuts,
Right.
And now, and the big breakout we just said is him being forcing cutter, curve, slider. It's a lot, and so I'm now teaching my kid too. And one of the things that I used to do like fastball command all the time, and then he can rip as many breaking balls at the end if he hits his fastball command targets, right? Because he really wants to, he wants to make the ball move. He's like every kid; they want to make the
of course, it's the coolest thing ever, right?
But what we realized was if he rips a bunch of breaking balls and then he gets to the point where like he's got a good one and he's dancing around the mound, we're all super happy because it broke and it's awesome,
right?
Then he tries to throw a fastball the next time, he throws it in the dirt.
Yeah, right. Exactly right.
So this is actually kind of brings together a lot of the stuff we've been talking about extension, release point. This release point is a place out in space, that is different for different pitches. And I think, when the Orioles banned the cutter, one of the things they were saying is you start getting around side the ball, you start cutting your fastball, you start losing velo, you get used to being like this. Sonny Gray's hand doesn't go straight.
That forcing always has the cut action. Yeah.
He can only do this, he can only put cut on the ball.
That was the theory that Fast had about the Yankees all learning cutters and then having worse fastballs. Was that all of them started to learn
Cole's
it
a little bit afraid of it. And Cole reduces his homers this year by throwing more cutters a little bit, but he doesn't want to push it because he's afraid of what it'll do to his fastball shape.
I mean, look what it did to his slider. That was a 15% swing strike rate this past year as opposed to like the 20% plus that we've seen before.
And yet he cut his home run rate, and it wasn't all bad. He won the friggin' Cy Young. So
did he really? I don't know. Finally,
I voted for that. But anyway, is there any risk with Cutter?
Well,
sort
of to that point,
cut disease.
So here's a India's movement profile of Cutter Crawford stuff.
They're not like Shane Green was kind of amorphous. It was like
the
curve was higher, and it was just like one big blob over there.
Right. So I can zoom in a bit on this.
There you go. That
and
purple
it does get some of it, but it does look like he's going more sweep on that cutter as opposed to just kind of doing more gyro. And it is really nice to see how much that curveball is super separate.
Yeah.
Right. And there's velocity gaps as well. Like you have the harder one at 89 with a cutter, and then this is 83 for the sweeper.
Is that like in relief or like he
No, that's as a starter. I remember watching some of these games and it was nice to see like that. Yep, that's your 89, 90. It's actually similar with Nick Pivetta, who's, I mean, really the whole Red Sox
dot you're showing. This is interesting. The dot you're showing is the average movement profile. But if you could like take a slider and be like, look at only 88 and above.
Oh, sure.
The movement profile might change and might be more distinct from the slider.
Kyle Bland, I'm sure you're listening right now.
Can I have a velo slider?
Show me on this thing a thing that only shows the dots per mile per hour.
Yeah.
Or like the band or whatever we want. That'd be great. Thank you so much.
You've got way more important things to do.
Now, this is also, I gotta say, this is such a beautiful showcase to me of why I don't like splitters.
Yeah.
You see how tight this is with the curveball, right? It's so inconsistent. Now, I'm sure if I put up Gosman's or if I put up Kodai Senga's, you're going to see a tighter circle.
No, the Ghost Fork is this big old scatter shot.
Yeah,
he puts it deep.
I was hoping I could give more praise to this one, but I just
maybe Gosman. Gosman has fairly good ability to place it.
Yeah,
So
I mean,
I could see him.
the thing about that to me is always like Hurston Waldrop's gotten a lot of attention recently, by the way, because he might be coming up from Atlanta, and he's really just a four-seamer splitter guy. And I might like him more because he's very over the top and very much so. And good splitters are that, where it's really hard to hear at the CIV hand. That's a true death ball, if you ask me, is like the four-seamer over the top, and then you throw a splitter in the same exact release straight down, because both pitches are coming straight down, and then one's just going so much more than the other.
Cheers.
But, yeah.
West Coast offense. Go Niners. We made it.
Man.
Hey, you know what? Look at us.
Look at us, huh?
Look at us. Look at us. Look at us.
The craft beer in your hand.
Look at us. I thought that was fun. I hope that we get some good feedback. If you guys want us to be a little bit more focused, or I think we're stuck with the two pitcher concept. Two pitchers.
No, don't say it. No. Gonna cut that. No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. Yeah. I mean, the way I see this is, let's just we have that as a foundation. But if you notice, we talked about like 15 different pitchers there. But you came in with Cal Harrison, Cutter Crawford. I mean, Nick Pivetta, the Whirly Bird, is also the really, really fun thing. And he finally got true separation in a really good secondary now. And that four-seamer has some of the highest IVB in the majors. And
he is always a stuff underperformer.
Oh, man. I think it's just because he couldn't command a secondary to throw for strikes confidently. Yeah. And like now he has, it's like the same thing with Cutter Crawford, the 90-mile-per-hour cutter. Yeah. And for a strike. And then he has the Whirly Bird, which was legit for him. I'm so in. But yeah, this is fun. And you had a craft beer. Good. So I'm glad that craft really
brand going. It's Friday.
But before we go, what are you doing now? Like, what's the next couple weeks for you?
Big one is pitcher ranks coming out on Monday.
Yes. I'm so excited to be like, what is this?
We revised Stuff Plus, and one of the two things that were big was we put in platoon splits. There's some argument in the industry about like whether that should be in Stuff Plus. Is that a physical characteristic? I think it speaks to whether the physical characteristic works against both hands. So I think it's important to put it in there.
Sure.
The other thing that was really important was adjusting for altitude and air density, because if you look at IVB by temperature or altitude or air density, IVB changes drastically from park to park. It's obvious when you think of Coors Field, but there are other parks
you have the millimeters that are higher or lower on the mountain too. No, I'm just kidding.
Bryce Elder popped a little bit, so I was wondering, one of the highest altitude parks in the big leagues other than Coors Field is Atlanta.
Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow.
Atlanta used to be called the launching pad.
Oh, my gosh. Oh, right. And then they had the wall change in right field.
Yeah. And it was partially because of weird. It's not a lot. It's not 5,000 feet. It's like 800 or something, but it's like a little bit more than people expect.
Yeah, that's a really cool thing. I'm looking forward to that. I can't wait to see your rankings, but I got to make sure mine are out first. I just can't see them. I can't do it.
5:59 on Monday morning.
I don't. Yeah, like the second I have it published, like okay, let me go. But no, I got to make sure I don't have that bias. I got to just go in.
Well, I've got Cutter at a good spot. I might nudge him up a couple more after that conversation.
I swear to God, you were about to say his rank. I was like, no, don't stop. Don't say the number right now. But yeah, I can't wait for that. I hope you guys enjoyed this first episode. We'll figure out some outro. I don't know. I've figured out for all of them. Maybe it's just like a bubbling craft beer or something. We'll figure it out.
Oh yeah, maybe you have the audio from me popping that.
Oh yeah.
Maybe that could be the end.
Pitching.
Oh, cheers.
That'll be awesome. But really, thanks so much for being a part of this. This was such a great way to debut this. I can't wait to do this with you.
Thanks,
Nick.
Cheers.
Thanks a ton, Yeah, good luck this weekend to your Niners. I'm sorry, I got to root for the Lions. Just to let you know, because like that. Come on,
because of Paul Sporer.
Because of Scott Chu.
Oh,
okay. And Sporer. But all right, thanks so much for being here, man. It's great to see you. We'll talk soon. Get out of here.